The Takbir, also written Tekbir or Takbir, is the term for the Arabic phrase Allāhu Akbar, usually translated as Allah is great. Allah is the greatest, God is great, or God is the greatest. It is a common Islamic Arabic expression, used in various contexts by Muslims, in formal prayer, in the call for prayer, as an informal expression of faith, in times of distress, or to express resolute determination. The form Allahu is the nominative of Allah, meaning God. In the context of Islam, it is the proper name of God. The form Akbar is the elative of the adjective Kabir, meaning great, from the Semitic root Kbr. As used in the Takbir, it is usually translated as greatest, but some authors prefer greater. The term Takbir itself is the stem two-verbal noun of the triliteral root Kbr, meaning great, from which Akbar, greater, is derived. The literal and correct translation of Allāhu Akbar in Arabic is, God is greater, rather than, God is great, Allāhu Kabir, or, God is the greatest, Allāhu Akbar. This is the true meaning in the usage of this phrase too, as to downgrade any entity or concept that seems to be great by recalling that God is greater, yet it is used to emphasize that God is greater than any real entity or imaginary concept one may appreciate. In the call for prayer, it means God is greater than worldly affairs. In battlefields, God is greater than the enemy or distress. In religious conviction, God is still greater than any theology. The phrase is well known in the West for its common use as a battle cry in Islamist protests, Islamic extremism, and Islamic terrorism. The expression Allāhu Akbar is never mentioned in the Quran, and Akbar is not listed among the over 100 Asma al-Husna of God that are repeated throughout the Quran. But the Quran lists al-Kabir among the Asma al-Husna. Usage. This phrase is recited by Muslims and Arabic-speaking Orthodox Christians in many different situations. For example, when they are very happy, to express approval, to prevent a Muslim from becoming prideful by reminding them that Allah is their source of success, or as a battle cry, during times of extreme stress. In prayer, the phrase is said during each stage of both obligatory prayers and supererogatory prayers. The Muslim call to prayer by the muezzin and to commence prayer also contains the phrase. In the Quran, the phrase is missing in the Quran, and the Quran does not refer to God as Akbar, but uses the name Al-Kabir or Kabir, commonly translated as most great. In times of distress, this phrase is also used in times of distress. Just before a Garuda Airbus A300B4 crashed into the jungle near Medan, Indonesia, the pilot screamed, "RRR, Allāhu Akbar," into his radio. According to a radio communication transcript, the pilot's conversation with the air controller had been in English, but his last words were this Arabic phrase as the plane crashed on September 26, 1997, killing all 235 people aboard in Indonesia's deadliest crash. It was suspected that the crash may have been due to either disorientation or engine failure caused by local dense smog resulting from forest fires. After a failed attempt to climb the world's second highest peak, K2, according to Greg Mortenson's book, he was greeted by his porter with the phrase, Allah Akbar, blessings to Allah you're alive, in times of joy and gratitude when Reshma Begum was discovered alive 17 days after the 2013 Sabah building collapse in Bangladesh which killed 1129 people. Crowds jubilantly cried Allāhu Akbar to express their joy and gratitude that she had survived. As a multi-purpose phrase, it is sometimes used by Arab football commentators as an expression of amazement. Following births and deaths, the phrase is used after the birth of a child as a means of praising God. In the Hadith, Muhammad is reported to have spoken the Takbir after a funeral, during the Eid festival, and the Hajj during the festival of Eid al-Adha and the days preceding it. Muslims recite the Takbir. This is particularly the case on the day of Arafah. Jihadist usage. The phrase is well known in the West for its common use as a battle cry in Islamist protests, Islamic extremism, and Islamic terrorism. After the September 11 attacks in 2001, the FBI released a letter reportedly handwritten by the hijackers and found in 3 separate locations on the day of the attacks: at Dulles International Airport, at the Pennsylvania crash site, and in hijacker Mohammed Atta's suitcase. It included a checklist of final reminders for the 9/11 hijackers. An excerpt reads, "When the confrontation begins, strike like champions who do not want to go back to this world. Shout Allāhu Akbar, because this strikes fear in the hearts of the non-believers." Also, in the cockpit voice recorders found at the crash site of Flight 93, the hijackers are heard reciting the Takbir repeatedly as the plane plummets toward the ground and the passengers attempt to retake control of the plane. When in March 2002 Maryam Mohammed Yusuf Farhat of Hamas, popularized as Nadal, learned that her 17-year-old son had died during a suicide attack in which he killed 5 teenagers, she celebrated by proclaiming Allāhu Akbar and giving out boxes of halva and chocolates. In the video of Nick Berg being beheaded in Iraq in 2004, the perpetrators can be heard shouting Allāhu Akbar. And in the 2007 Fort Dix attack plot, a group of radical Islamists who were convicted of plotting an attack on the Fort Dix military base in New Jersey had videotaped themselves shooting weapons and shouting Allāhu Akbar. In 2008, AAFIA Siddiqui is alleged to have fired at U.S. interrogators while yelling Allah Akbar. During the 2009 Fort Hood shooting, witnesses reported that gunman Nidam Malik Hassan shouted Allāhu Akbar before opening fire, killing 13 people and wounding 30 others. And Times Square bomber Faisal Shahzad smiled and said Allāhu Akbar after receiving a life sentence in 2010 for his attempted bombing during the incident aboard American Airlines Flight 1561 in 2011. The person attempting to bash his way into the cockpit was heard shouting Allāhu Akbar. Mohamed Merah recorded himself shouting Allāhu Akbar as he killed 3 French paratroopers in the 2012 Midi-Pyrénées shootings. In the 2014 Jerusalem synagogue attack, witnesses reported that the perpetrators screamed Allāhu Akbar as they axed and shot at the worshippers. The killers in the January 2015 Charlie Hebdo shooting in Paris shouted Allāhu Akbar during their attack. During the November 2015 Paris attacks, witnesses reported hearing gunmen shouting Allāhu Akbar before opening fire in the Bataclan theater, killing 89 people. In warfare and politics in history, it has been used historically as a battle cry during war. It was first used in war by Muhammad in the Battle of Badr, the first battle in Islam. Iranian usage during the Iranian Revolution of 1979, it was shouted from rooftops in Iran during the evenings as a form of protest. This practice returned in the aftermath of the 2009 Iranian presidential election, to protest the election results. Many people shouted it from 2200 to 22:30 every night after the 2009 Iranian election to protest the result. In Syrian and Iraqi insurgency, in videos released during the course of the Syrian civil war, Free Syrian Army, Al-Nusra Front, other rebel and Islamist groups and ISIL forces are heard shouting Takbir and Allāhu Akbar in the background while fighting. Even more secular groups such as the Free Syrian Army, Operation Southern Storm have been heard yelling the phrase before the firing of heavy weapons. In the course of the Iraqi insurgency, Islamist fighters are seen and heard shouting Takbir and Allāhu Akbar. Jihadists and the Islamist videos are also shown its fighters making Takbir with a pointing finger up. On flags, the phrase Allāhu Akbar is written on the center of the flag of Iraq. 22 times along the borders of the central white stripe on the flag of Iran, and beneath the Shahada in the flag of Afghanistan in white script on the central red background as determined by the 2004 draft constitution. Iraq. During the Persian Gulf War in January 1991, Saddam Hussein held a meeting with top military commanders, where it was decided to add the words Allāhu Akbar to Iraq's flag to boost his secular regime's religious credentials. Casting himself as the leader of an Islamic army, Hussein described the flag as the banner of jihad and monotheism. In 2004, Iraq's U.S.-picked governing council approved a new flag for Iraq that abandoned symbols of Hussein's regime, such as the words Allāhu Akbar. In January 2008, however, Iraq's parliament passed a law to change the flag by leaving in the phrase, but changing the calligraphy of the words Allāhu Akbar, which had been a copy of Hussein's handwriting, to a Kufic script. Iran. The phrase Allāhu Akbar is written on the Iranian flag, as called for by Article 18 of Iran's constitution. The phrase appears 22 times on the flag. Afghanistan. The Afghan constitution that came into force on January 4, 2004, required that Allāhu Akbar be inscribed on Afghanistan's national flag. 1930s Waziristan resistance movement. A resistance movement that fought British rule in Waziristan, Pakistan, in the 1930s used a red flag bearing Allāhu Akbar in white letters. Flag of Afghanistan, with the phrase beneath the Shahada. Flag of Iraq, with stylized Kufic script. Flag of Iran, introduced in 1980. Flag of 1930s Waziristan resistance movement.